We all know the movie version. The ship goes down, and musicians play a solemn hymn to help passengers gracefully accept their fate. It's a beautifully romantic image. It also completely misses the functional reality of what those men were actually doing. To understand what happened on the deck of the Titanic, you have to grasp the sheer density of the population on board. This giant vessel was essentially a floating city, carrying roughly 2,200 people across the ocean. When the ship struck the iceberg in the North Atlantic, the passengers suddenly faced two lethal realities. The first was the physical danger of the freezing ocean. The second was the psychological danger of each other. Disaster psychology shows us that in mass evacuations, human panic is a deadly variable. When pure survival instinct takes over, crowd crushes, trampling, and violent riots can easily claim as many lives as the initial accident. The officers on the Titanic lacked the physical manpower to restrain thousands of terrified passengers. If they were going to load lifeboats without the crowd rioting, they needed a way to control people's minds. The 8 musicians aboard the Titanic, led by Wallace Hartley, were not official crew members. They were independent contractors, hired through a third-party agency in Liverpool to play elegant dinner music for first-class guests. When the lower decks began taking on water, no captain gave the band an order to play. These young men voluntarily grabbed their instruments, assembled on the boat deck, and started performing. This diagram illustrates what happens in the brain during an emergency. Sudden danger activates the amygdala, triggering a fight-or-flight response. By playing upbeat tunes, they created an auditory illusion of safety, short-circuiting panic with rhythmic waveforms. As this model zooms out to the crowd, you can see the effect. By maintaining this illusion, the musicians kept passengers docile, actively preventing the crowd from rushing the deck. The historical record confirms this worked. During the early stages of the sinking, the loading of the lifeboats was highly disciplined. Passengers waited their turn and boarded the small wooden craft with unusual calm. The musicians were actively functioning as a life-saving crowd control system, buying the crew precious minutes to launch the boats. They played cheerful waltzes in a horrific environment. The air temperature over the Atlantic that night was approximately -2 degrees Celsius. Their bare hands faced immediate frostbite, making the precise finger movements required for stringed instruments nearly impossible. As the bow sank lower, the deck angled sharply toward the water. Heavy wooden chairs and tables slid past the band, leaving them with no flat surface to stand or brace their feet against. Then the ship's electrical grid failed. The massive liner went pitch black. Unable to read their sheet music, the men had to coordinate their playing entirely from memory in the dark. Continuing to play a stringed instrument under freezing, severely tilted, and pitch-black conditions requires agonizing physical endurance. They actively fought the elements to keep the music going. In the immediate aftermath of the sinking, the corporations involved did not classify these men as heroes. Look at this document. Because the musicians were independent contractors, the agency they worked for sent invoices to their grieving families, demanding payment for the sheet music and uniforms lost in the wreck. When the public discovered these invoices, the reaction was furious. Global outrage flooded the newspapers, forcing the media to cover the band's actions and elevating them to legendary status. The public pressure resulted in permanent physical memorials dedicated to their sacrifice. Communities funded these monuments themselves, overriding the corporate narrative completely. Bureaucratic systems treated the men as financial liabilities on a ledger. Humanity recognized them as the ultimate symbols of duty. In 2013, investigators authenticated Wallace Hartley's actual violin. Recovered from the ocean and kept in secret for decades, this physical artifact of courage survived longer than the ship itself. The survivors shivering in those lifeboats reported a haunting detail. Sitting in the dark water, they listened to the notes drifting across the ocean, slowly fading out only as the water finally swallowed the deck. When the mechanical systems failed and survival seemed impossible, 8 ordinary workers chose to offer comfort to strangers. They provided the dying ship with proof that human empathy can outlast destruction.